Good morning. Another video in the series of Life in Academia. I'm Kshitas. I'm a professor in University of Connecticut in the US. And today we're going to talk about the gold star rule, particularly in reference to citations. Now, all of us who even are in undergrads, years or in PhD know that how you count a person's productivity, how successful a person is basically by citations. And there are all sorts of metrics that have been developed about citations. Google Scholar has become a very common one in the field of life sciences. There's also a German company called ResearchGate. Many people have their profile. I also have their profile, and they give their own metric based on number of citations, who cited, and there are more and more metric that are being developed, right? There's an H-index metric, there's the I-10 metric. NIH has now developed new kind of scores. Why are we developing all these metrics, right? We're developing these metrics because there is a need to probably understand who is doing better and who is doing not so better, right? And who is influential in the field, who is not so influential in the field. How do you really rank people on the basis of how successful they are, how productive they are, how much contribution they have made? And so, citation became a very nice way to ask. Well, a person is, publishing some work, some paper, and then paper that can then get cited by other people, which means that they're using that paper and, for building up their own work. And therefore, the person who gets cited most effectively probably has contributed more meaningfully or more substantially to the field as compared to the person whose work just remained a loner work. Nobody really cited his or her work, right? But the problem that always starts with this metric is, the gold star rule, basically fighting or competing for the gold star or some kind of a medal. It's actually a colloquial reference to what is the Goodhart's law, which was by a gentleman called Goodhart, who propounded this law, who said that when a measure itself becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. So when you create a measure, the problem that happens is that people then start running to win on that metric. I think as human beings, we compete with each other. We want to set up ourselves in certain kind of hierarchy, judge each other's on the basis of those hierarchies. Where are our peers standing compared to us? Where are our people who are considered as successful? So what is the real way to reach there, right? What exactly do I need? How much do I need to collect, the snow with my work, as a snowball rolls down the mountain, right? As your academic path keeps moving forward. And I have seen so frequently with people that the metric itself becomes the goal. Not what you're doing, not the science that you're doing, not the literature that you're doing, not the law or medicine or whatever else you're doing, and contributing into the fields, whichever field you are as an academician, but how you are judged on the metric. What metric? Where are you on that metric? Unfortunately, it becomes necessary for procedural matters. For example, for tenure application, when I wrote my promotion or tenure application, I had to write down, well, see all these metric, where I stand on these metric, I'm good or bad. Of course, you're going to say you're good, right? So you have to somewhere do that. But I think it is very easy to lose sight as an individual that metric is really not telling you anything beyond the number itself. It is not, there are many ways possibly to game the system. And, at the end of a long life that you would have in a profession, what you really want to contribute is just some numbers or some substantive thing that stay there for very long periods of time, right? Which people can refer to and think about, and may open up opportunities for them to think in a very different way. Or you're building a field, and or you're building an invention, and people are using that invention uh, beyond what is only reflected in the metric. It is easier said than done because it is very easy to get completely seduced by a number, right? So people keep looking at, oh, when somebody comes for a seminar, uh, or you meet someone, now you can just go online and find out how much they've contributed. For researchers, it is an easy thing. For people working in industry, it is very, very difficult to really know what they have really contributed, right? It is a hidden thing. But one of the plus points of people in academia is that everything is out in public. Your numbers are out in public, your website is out in public, your papers are out in public, and so you can read them. You can see what metric a person really has. The problem sometimes starts happening is that when the metric is itself a target, the Goodhart's law, it ceases to be a good measure, and sometimes it can take a much more vicious form, which is sometimes referred to as the Cobra effect. The Cobra effect is that when the metric itself is incentivized, right? For example, it does when you are applying for jobs, for promotions, for tenure, and so on and so forth, then the original problem actually becomes worse, because then the reward, for example, the reason the word Cobra effect comes is because if there is a reward for killing a poisonous snake, then there would be people who will now start breeding these poisonous snakes, because now you can breed them, you can grow them, and then you can kill them and get the award, right? So get the reward. So this is called the Cobra effect, and I think something like this has started happening in many of the citation indices. There are many ways in which it happens. Of course, one way is self-citation. You can keep citing your own work. Previously, nobody notices it. I'll tell you a real example of a review that I was asked to write as a student at that time. So I was, one of the authors, and we just wanted to get a little perspective from a very well-known person in the field. I would not name the person, of course, and I have many other reviews, so you cannot really figure out whom I'm talking about. But we said that could you provide certain perspective, and my professor had worked with this person before a little bit. So basically, we kept waiting. We asked them, do you have anything? We need to submit this review in time, and so on and so forth. All we got as edits on that review draft was self-citations. I think there were so many self-citations that half of my reference list was basically the self-citation of this famous scientist. And he insisted that one of his postdocs should be part of the paper, which is probably fine if he had really contributed. But there were so many self-citations that when the review draft was reviewed in the journal, one of the reviewers questioned, why are there so many self-citations, as if nobody else has contributed to the field that you are presenting? You seem to be writing a review for yourself, reviewing your own papers and nobody else's. There were so many self-citations, and the respect for that person just dropped so much in my eye, because it told me that, yes, this person probably is very successful for many, many reasons, but part of that is also that, he invested too much in this self-prophesizing, self-citation methods. And really, how much should I, consider this person's contributions really? It's a very, very difficult measure to find out. So what has started happening is that people now have come up with new metric to identify self-citations. But then you can have network effects. Network effect is that now you're a group of 4 or 5 people who collaborate with each other, and you keep citing each other's work a lot. Okay, so you're not really self-citing, but you are clique citing. Okay, so you form a clique or a cabal or some kind of a little group, and then you self-cite each other. This is extremely common, extremely vicious. People reach very, very high citation indices by this, which is not reflective of their true contribution. And basically what is really going on is this self-citation through a network, which is extremely common. And I think some of the federal agencies, some of the scientific agencies are trying to now, go against it and try to find these evidences and basically penalize them. But my view is that I think there are many, many methods like that, right? For example, you can even cite your work multiple times, or or break the papers into multiple small papers, so that each one of them is not really innovative, but that it increases the overall citation. So, when you hear about, oh, this professor has published 200 papers, yeah, if that only tells you, if the person has not been long in the game, right? That person has been 10 years in the game and has published 200 papers, only tells you the quality of work that they've actually put in, right? So I think in some sense, these numbers are, all of these numbers, the point I want to make is we should think of them as guiding principles, not a target. And when we are looking at contribution of a particular person, you should you should you should start thinking about it from the perspective of, overall, what the reputation of this person is, how other people talk about that person. Uh, are there major papers who are citing their work as the authoritative work on that field? I think that's the most important number, and that's something that you will only learn if you're in the field. So people in the field know about the influence of a person, even if they might not have the most citation numbers. I know very, very junior people who have tons of citation numbers, but they do not do quality work. And there are other people who have done extremely high quality work and do not have those high citation numbers. Um, but everyone recognizes that those are the influential people in the field. Those are the people who contributed the most. We are, standing on the shoulders of those giants. So it is important for the department heads, for the deaneries, to come with ways in which we are starting to evaluate our scholars, not simply by these numbers, but by a broad, set of criteria. And I think as junior people in the field, you probably need these numbers because that's where the world is. But you are going to create a legacy. Sometimes I'll give you one example of my own, another one. There is a field that we are working on, which is so lonely that nobody cites us at all on that work. Probably we are the only people. Okay, but it has led us to actually the people. I ask, what are the papers that we get to cite, right? Well, we are citing work that were done in 1970s, 1980s, and nobody cited those works very much at all. But we are building on that work because that was like, it was a field that had a little spark, and then the spark died out because some counter factuals came in. But we are trying to resolve it and could become a very, very influential field 10 years later. So I will not see the effect of this for the next 10 years unless I work hard to build that, unless we work hard to build that field, create the platform so that it does become important. Once it does become important, I hope and I think it will, lead to some real large contributions, or we may completely fail. Now, in cases like these, you will not find the things that take 10 years to build, you would not know. We have a saying in Hindi, if a peacock dances in the jungle, who knows the peacock ever danced, right? If you did not observe it, did it really happen? Uh, Something like, the cat in the black box in quantum mechanics. Uh, but uh, but many influential, the most important things, the most important contributions have had a similar history where people contributed, nobody noticed them for a long time, then slowly people start noticing because they were building something which required a whole platform. From idea to the completion of the idea took them a decade, and nobody really cited them. But once they cited, once the work was well recognized, it became very, very influential work. Many works are like that, and you will probably know about many of those stories among scientists. So keep an eye on the metric, but do not use it as a target. Use it as a guiding principle. And this is a lesson I think we should all learn. It is not only for junior scholars, it is for senior people, and it is people in the administration who are making decisions about tenure and so on and so forth, because you can game any metric. You can game any metric, and sometimes the metric, just because a metric exists and just because now people have come up with a way to game it, becomes even worse than when the metric never really existed. So, quantification is not always a useful, always a positive thing. Sometimes quantifying something makes it even worse. Another example, people often cite is that quarterly reports by financial institutions and corporates probably have dealt much worse. It has resulted in this complete deindustrialization simply because people are constantly chasing those numbers, and sometimes the way to chase those quarterly report numbers are not the best things. You're not really going to make investments because they don't look that good, but you might do share buyback or other means to basically go beyond the metric that increases the shareholder value. But the shareholder value increasing in very short term, uh, even for multiple quarters, for many, many, many years, might result in a complete decimation or complete erosion of the deep value that the company represented. This sometimes happens in science, uh, it certainly happens with individuals and groups and networks that tend to chase these metric and forget about why are they chasing this metric and what does this metric really represent. So you can be famous for the metric, or you can be famous for the real contribution that you've made. And I can tell you, the people in the field know this. So do not chase a metric. Use them as guiding principles. Okay, we'll see you in the next video. Take care.